We are live. We are live. Okay, should be fine. Way out of Ugh. Whoa. 121 guns. Okay. Hello, G-Talk. Yummy, yummy. Huh. I'm always worried that I come back the next day that it's not gonna look that good anymore. Or that it's gonna fit into one of those very typical sort of buckets of emotion where it's not that I don't necessarily like it, but that I can very clearly see it's being pushed or pulled into a specific direction. Hello, Yugami. But so far, none of these days has kind of gone in either of these directions. It's not like I come back, I don't like it. It's not like I come back, I see a very clear direction that I was trying to go to, but it's not something that I wanted to have, right? Because as much as possible, I am trying to figure out what I like, just in a base, sort of in a vacuum, without looking at someone else's stuff, without trying to align to someone else's style. So today that emotion continues. It's like I don't really know. Is it? It doesn't look like I'm trying to go to someone else's place, but I also don't necessarily like it, 100%. It looks fine. That's basically it. Very very weird. Anyways, I was looking at Twitter for some ideas for rendering. Nothing came out that I really liked. As always, it's fine. I think the more I draw, the less dependent I am to sort of have a thing to lock onto. Because I'm starting to feel like it doesn't really matter if things are consistent or not, almost. Like maybe there's some part, like say the hair, right? Like the head is round. Maybe this part should have been a bit smoother as it sort of transits away, right? Like on a sphere. Um, as you go away from the area in the light. Maybe not. Maybe I can have like soft edges on this round object, but not have soft edges on this round object. Maybe. I guess for the hair, you can kind of argue that it might be strands of hair, but I don't know. More vibing out nowadays than rather than specifically trying to figure things out. By the way, what do I want to do now? I need to let's get some more colors in the lines first. Where's my lines? Here? That's the body. Okay. Meow, 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 meow. What? Oh. Today we try to figure out more textures and shit. Is that on a different layer? What? Why is this part not? Huh. What? Oh, because of this guy. I don't want to put it on top. Indeed. I'm gonna go all the way down to see the truth of the universe. What? What the? Who the hell did this cut? Holy shit. How did I not see this? Insane. Of course. You get me. All the best with your cleanup. Yeah, some of the textures are a little bit more crispy now that I'm looking at it. I think it's still okay. But based on the current read, I think some of these are gonna decay away over time. Based on my experience with some of the other things I've felt and how those things ended up being. Likely I'm gonna replace it somehow. But that's fine. That's all par for the course. Is this only hair? It is, right? Hello, George. I will. Thank you, George. Personally, I'm kind of okay with it. It's nice and fun to draw because it's so simple. Or rather, it's so rough, I should say. But when it comes to rendering, I don't know how well it fits, honestly. But again, right, like there's always this conundrum between like going for something that you have seen that you know that people have already accepted, right? You see an established artist do it, you know that the general public accepts it. But then, do you want to do exactly the same as what everyone else does? No, right? Exactly. So like, not exactly the same. So I guess at some point you kind of have to go off on your own way. This isn't necessarily me trying to do that. This is me trying to make it easier for myself to draw, which I think is a complete valid reason too, I suppose. So I don't know. Maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't stick. It's hard to say. Within the confines of the objectives of this one piece, I think makes sense, I guess. We just want to get some lines out there, practice some render. Not too particular. Meow, 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 meow. Okay, the lighting. I was wondering if I want to change the lighting yesterday. I'm still kind of on the fence. In which case, I'm just gonna leave it. If I don't want to change it enough, I think it's kind of hard to hold a direction and go somewhere good. So, no reason to make it harder on myself then. Ah. Alright, what do I need to render? Mostly the stuffed animal, and then like the hair even we can just kind of hand wave almost even. It's off, okay. There's the shark. Okay. How do I want to do this though? Okay. We have no reflected light. I don't really want to care. That's fair, I think. Okay. Well, play with brushes, I guess. Just like yesterday. I need to get this. Yeah, I still think textures like this are really hard to use, where there's a lot of gaps between all of these splotches. Yeah, let me wait. Did I write something down yesterday? I don't remember. Somewhere here is a it's a thing. This is the current layering setup. Um Right. Okay, let me make some more notes here. It should just be painted in. Height. Darken, bro. Well, right, no, this is not wait, but other than this, there's only actually there's only one parameter here, which is basically how wide the region is. So I'm trying to figure out like I'm trying to say how many steps do I have to take back, right? So I like textures that only kind of exist along the edges of like, so you have a very solid piece of shape, like of color, another solid piece of color. Along the transition, you have some textures essentially, almost as though it's standing in for that curve nurse, right? And this is pretty similar to real life, right? You don't really see the textures on the lit side or the dark side. Sometimes it's dynamic range problem with the camera. Sometimes it's just because the angle of the light hitting the surface at an angle where you don't get the undulations, right? You don't really see the undulations. But along the transition, it's easier to see this sort of texture material. And that's just how real life works as well. And so in my mind, I'm like, I guess I only like those textures versus textures that are sort of more consistently across the board. You can imagine like the most common case would be like a noise filter across the entire thing. And then a noise filter kind of is like a texture where you have a lot of gaps in there, right? You have a lot of tiny pixels of different color next to each other. So as a result, it doesn't look like a solid blob of color, but rather just a huge mass of different color pixels across the board. So I would say, like, in my mind, I was thinking as these two as like two separate things, but really they're the same idea. And what we're talking about is not necessarily about whether if it's along edges or like across the entire thing, but rather just the width of this zone where the texture is being rendered in. So you could still, classify them to two areas here along the edges versus across everything. But in reality, it's the same thing at the end of the day, I would say. You have a solid area, and then you have the texture area. And then really what the difference is that between different brushes and between different ways of doing it, it's not so much about across along edges, but rather like how wide is this? Sorry, this, bro. I'm kind of spell. So again, I'm defining the texture regions to be the areas where you can see this undulation, you can see this transition, which inherently means a lot of sort of these kind of gaps in that sort of region, right? And I feel like if that region is huge, it becomes, first of all, the patterns become very noticeable, and the thing becomes really rough. It takes a lot of attention because you can see that contrast in details. So it's always about that balance, about how wide is this area. So generally, I think maybe a little bit. So like a little. Hello, Deemer. So this is A, right? So a little. So relative to shapes, areas, that's a little bit, and then this is like a, so more, and then C can be something like, for example, if I take this brush, I turn it up to the max, and then say I'm only keeping this region or something, right? Or it could be like some kind of a noise brush. For example, it would be, oh yeah, something like this. Wait. Right, in this kind of situations, you basically only have this region, that texture region. So it's like zero, it's like maybe a little percent, maybe like shit, where's my brush? So this would be like approximately 5 to 10% maybe. Maybe even less actually, maybe like less than 5% even almost, it feels like. Maybe like 15 to 20%. And this would, over here would be like 100% essentially. It's all of these kind of areas. And I'm trying to think what other sort of textures might there be. So really, okay, so hang on. So there is still a little bit of a difference between all these different options because, sorry, not between these options, but between these options and other options. So I'm trying to think. So this is more of a binary sort of case. So in the sense that there's only two colors here involved. It could be possible that we have sort of midtones. So again, I think these guys can kind of be merged together still because midtones is kind of just saying, rather than having two colors, you have one more color in between, and then again you're applying this idea of how much percent of space you're using up for textures. You can still argue that way. But specifically, I'm thinking of the brushes that do mixing, and I don't know how to think about these just yet because there are these brushes where shit, where is it? Where they do blending, but the edges is not smooth. They kind of just get really roughed up by whatever texture that is on the brush. I don't know where I put it. Because I keep shifting brushes yesterday, and I don't know where everything is. Dang it. It's not that one, that's for sure. was a Japanese name, wasn't it? This one here, for example. This one's not very good right now. I can't really see it. Let me see. So I do this. This is the eraser. These ones that do color transition along the way. Now, effectively, you can think of it as the same as the binary system, but just with midtones. Maybe effective is not a word, but like you can kind of think of it like that. But then if like when you're drawing it, it is very different, right? Because you're starting with still with two colors, but the brush itself is able to generate this middle color and add in a lot more detail with a lot of different shades. So now it's interesting because rather than having one zone, I would argue this feels like more like having different zones. Sorry, the whole reason why I'm doing this, by the way, is so that I can break down different textures into different sort of categories. And I'm trying to sort of have a very structured way to bring it down to like exactly what I like. Also, hello, Duvet. So it's like having different zones. So it makes many of such zones. I should have written it this way. So it's a little less harsh, right? The contrast between each individual region is a lot less. And so I mean this would be very similar. Uh or the other way around. I wonder if they look different. Doesn't look very good, does it? Right, because inherently the binary system and the blurring are two separate actions. So it doesn't look as good versus something that actually does it on the fly, I would say. So that's interesting to think about. I kind of like this system more. The only downside of this is that I don't really know how you would put in, say, for example, a Terminator color. I guess you have to brush it twice, essentially. Whereas, yeah, I mean, even for this, right, you're still kind of doing similar problems. It's still a problem where you don't have that color. Because the midtones here, between the light and dark, will very seldom contain the Terminator color that you do want, because it tends to be a lot more saturated than either color. And you can't really make some more saturated color from this. So, okay. Sorry, David, I'll get to your daily in a bit. I'm just trying to make sure I don't... Right. Right. So there's another whole different sort of family worth of brushes. So far, all these brushes that we're talking about, we're relying on the brush tip for the texture, right? How you use it is one thing, how it makes its color is one thing, but they're all fundamentally just the brush tip. Then we have these brushes that rely basically on just a textural frow, right? And I generally hate these because the pattern is way too obvious. But it's not necessarily I hate the fact that they're using a texture like this, but more of just the texture itself that I hate. This specific one being so big. But regardless, these are kind of sort of a separate category of textures. So let me see. So a few things to know here. It's kind of ironic that all these really crisp edges kind of serves as like a soft edge, because from afar it looks like you're transitioning the colors a little bit more gently, despite there being no soft edges, right? It's kind of like the pixel art when they do dithering, where all these pixels are sort of slowly phased out, and as a result, from afar you see kind of like a gradient. But right, so we have that, and then we have the other category. My god, my numbers are not very good, I think. But this is like, say, category 1. Now you have the category 2s. Too obvious. And then of course you can merge with the previous one, which is kind of what we have for one of our brushes here, right? This here is the example of having a lot of things happening at the same time. So everything considered, I think the main issue with all the textures that I don't like is, if I don't like the texture themselves, is primarily because of this, where the gaps are really big. Yes, Duvet, kind of. Sorry, Duvet, I'll get to that in a bit. Let me just finish my thought. The other one is just a balancing issue, where the balance between what has texture and what doesn't have texture is very, very offside. Like, there should be less texture, I would say. I don't think everything should be so rough, unless it's like a very noisy kind of stuff, like a very small, noisy kind of thing. But these details that are meant to sort of be a little bit more eye-catching, a bit more obvious, should be placed a little bit less. I think that makes sense. So if I do place textures, let me see. Yeah, if so if it's not, it still needs to be decently fine. Number 2, overall balance of where of well, I'm just gonna call it has not, but I don't know if the grammar works out here. I think this is the kind of balance I'm looking for. We'll test this hypothesis, I think, going forwards. But if there is a brush that has a texture, then we'll either classify under as something that is just for noise, kind of like just for this. In which case, I don't think I mind too much. It doesn't matter too much if there is or isn't. So if it's fine grained enough to be like this, I think we can. I will probably use it more. What's the word? Less sparingly. But if it's a little bit bigger, so for example, like these ones here, stuff like this is getting into the category where it becomes very eye-catching and it's starting to dominate that region, then maybe a little bit less, right? I feel like this is probably at the limits of what I'm willing to put down. It kind of serves as a purpose of like sort of softening the edge, but also not really. So there's some sort of fine-grained middle ground. I don't really know what to call it, but there's some trickery here involved. Like there's some balance here that I need to figure out. But yes, Duvet, so with respect to your question, I think these two pieces, these two sort of sketches here, they were kind of done without anything in mind, per se. So, and I didn't want to spend too much time trying to figure out really complex lighting or setup because it's already kind of drawn, right? It's kind of this flat perspective. So I figured I might as well just get some colors in, whatever that might be, and then try to figure out some textures. Just try to use some more texture brushes and start to accumulate sort of different brushes that I like and do not like. Well, I don't accumulate the ones I do not like, but I'm also, in the meantime, making some notes. I'm trying to figure out what is it that I like and don't like. And have a more structured way of approaching and thinking about it, because I think it's a little bit overwhelming. Just like art in the beginning, there's like all these different sort of ideas, like fundamentals and skills and whatnot, but you don't necessarily see how they all come together or how they fall under the same umbrella of like art skills kind of thing. The relationship between the individual components is not necessarily very clear, and I think that kind of messes me up a lot, because if it's not clear, then it's a lot harder to understand and remember. And for us, there is not sort of learning from anyone in particular. Not having a structure. Oh, I didn't turn on my Discord. Not having a structure, I think, is very detrimental to effective learning. I remember my first year of university, everyone flunked the linear algebra. Because linear algebra was not taught in a way that was very structured. Nobody knew what to do with that knowledge. Nobody knew what each piece of knowledge is how it's connected to previous pieces. And as a result, all you can do is just force memorize. It's like learning a language, but you only learn like individual words and stuff. You don't necessarily learn how the grammar ties together. You remember individual sentences and their meanings, but you don't learn how the sentence is broken down, right? And as a result, it's really hard for you to form new ones. And when new sentences come in, you may or may not be able to understand, even if you can even like speak more complex sentences. It's like a brute force thing. But anyways, that's the goal anyways. In the meantime, the base dailies. This is a little what's happening here. Anyways, is this Thai? But anyways, is this Ray again? Not sure. Yeah, you gotta frame it, Igami. You gotta frame it. Oh, it is Adachi Ray. I would say. Everything, the colors, the shirt, and the setup. I think I've seen this before. Yeah, there's two approaches to the finding out of rendering and the whatchamacallit, the texture stuff. One approach is what I'm doing, I think, where we go from clean sets of blocks of colors and try to figure out what to do with the edges. The other way would to be just more painterly stuff like this, where you just kind of go as rough as you want. Use a huge variety of brushes. Maybe have some rules, like these set of brushes only for the hair, these set are only for the clothing, and you can swap them out. But within that one piece of illustration, you'll be kind of more consistent. But you will be very, very messy, and you have a lot of things. And then you try to find order in that mess until you get to a point where it's clean enough and you like it and you're satisfied. Then you can still go back in and then sort of examine the edges and examine the balance and so on and so forth. I think balance is probably easier to find that way, where you put in a lot and then try to recover from it. But otherwise, like figuring out specific brushes and shapes that you might like, I feel like it might be easier for me to go from clean shapes in, because that means every time I put texture in is very deliberate, and I see that texture, and nothing else is around there to interfere with it. It's more clinical, I would feel like. A lot of sugar apple seeds. Interesting. Whoa. Get out of here. How do you stop this thing? I don't know how. I just deleted it. Why do you have so many seeds? Did you... Oh, you just never threw away the seeds? Oh. I see, yes. Very painterly, a lot of different colors here. A lot of blue everywhere. I wonder if it grow those seeds. Wait, what? Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? At that point. Oh, okay, I see. So I do have a system to account for it then. Huh. Not 100%, but I can see it, barely. I think the seeds themselves have the potential to just like stay, what was the word? Usable after all those years. I guess it's just mostly the environment, like your seeds in particular. I wonder if it's stored in a way that would be fine. Alright, but then where is the line being drawn, right? Let me see this other artist real quick. Where is I think these ones here. RCI. What? Did they change the handle? Oh no, it's because I'm just stupid. Ah, because I'm stupid. I think it's impressive, like the amount of colors that's being displayed in here and how everything still ties together and works. But the thing I'm trying to think of is I don't think I like it as much, right? Like I still do like more structure. I still do like more bigger patches of consistent color. I want it to be colorful. Like okay, even if I want it to be colorful, I don't think it'll be in such an approach. So I'm trying to see what this other artist is like, because I really like that one piece that they did for like this one here. And the colors themselves, they are very vibrant. They're very saturated, are just mostly the same color. It's not to the point where you have a lot of stuff in happening at the same time. Yeah, also inherently, I guess this cannot be any darker or more saturated because it's going to be a problem. It's going to clash too much. It has to be some kind of gray. Whereas this one can be super saturated because it's just one color against the dark gray. Maybe you can think of it as two different sets then. Two different regimes of sort of colors. Coloring. Hmm. Anyways, yeah, thank you, Dubey. Definitely more painterly stuff. I feel like at some point, currently we're not really like reconciling the two sides, like because this workflow here today, these 2 days have been more traditionally cell shading sort of vibes, right? We block out the main color, we try to then craft the edges, try to add in texture here and there. Whereas if we were truly painting, where'd it go? Then I imagine it will end up more like this, where there's a lot more rough strokes, a lot more colors, and only areas that you really want to make it come into focus, you kind of clean it up a bit. I think we're kind of doing a little bit of both, in the sense that like the previous one with the Arknights one was a little bit more painterly. We had a lot of colors, and then we try to find sort of organize the colors afterwards. And then now we're doing this. At some point, the two is gonna collapse at some sort of in between on this scale, right? So if you have like a number line, a scale of like very cell shading and very painterly, we're kind of approaching from both sides, and then at some point we're gonna find a middle ground, I think. But yes, thank you, Duvay. Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like an analog to what we're doing with the textures too. Wherever we land on this graph, it's gonna be where we wanna be, right? So that's I guess that's interesting to see how it goes. Um. Anyways, in the meantime, coming back to this. Oh, it's maybe too soft or something. Wait, did YouTube chat stop showing timestamps? I thought YouTube chat had a timestamp before. How come I don't see it anymore? Oh, I turned it off? What the? Why is it off? Okay, Dear stream, Alright, now what? I need textures. So this texture here, going by our own classification here, is interesting. Because if we just do the usual, I don't know if it's enough. It could be enough. But because the nature of the material, I imagine there would be a lot more sort of noise within the lit area still, because we're talking about like fur. I suppose there's again two ways to approach it. We can always add more midtones and then just have layers of textures going in. Or we can stick to this binary system here and then figure something out that way. I'm gonna take a look at not this 270. Let's see if this gaudy one here. What the? Wait, did stuff change on this UI thing here? Anyways. Right, so this current state here, this state in this reference frame here. What? This frame of the reference process kind of has that really messy balance. I wouldn't say balance, it's just really messy. And then as they're slowly sort of blocking out bigger blobs of colors, they're solid relative to the other parts that has the texture. And then finally arriving at this solution here. I am wondering. So I'm expecting to do this multiple times actually. Let's just make a backup with this. And then we'll try something similar first. I'm just gonna mess it up. This one's kind of tricky because there's two colors, and then I'm still trying to maintain our noise here. It is still theoretically possible, I believe, because we're still operating on like a binary system. Actually, is that true anymore? I'm not sure if it's true anymore. Let's see if it's true here. I'm gonna dupe this, back it up. And then, how do I do this? So I want this color. Sorry, I need to remove this layer first. Yeah, it should maintain that noise pattern if it's done in the binary system here. So we can still stay consistent even if we just paint on one color first and propagate the changes over. That's fine. Okay, that's good to know, I would say. We have a backup here just in case. In the meantime, I don't need this. That being said though, like some changes are not gonna look as good because the balance of the values are different. So now what do? I have some textures in the transition. Wow, it's very messy. We have to clean it up. That's number one. And number two, we need to have maybe stuff here too. Where'd my marker go? Okay. This is too aggressive. The binary is set up. It's gonna destroy it by. Oh, interesting. Wait, that is interesting because that means the binary system. Where did I write that down? I thought I wrote down. Wait, let me think here. Okay, let me think here. Where was that done yesterday? Alright, so the idea of changing the shape itself versus gradient and off, but then gradients with very specifically it still holds, but then I guess it depends on the situation. Yeah, hey, something's at the tip of my tongue, but I cannot finish the thought. Yeah, it's kind of like this, right? Any part I put it on, it's not really gonna work. I need to maintain the general shape while making things more interesting somehow. Right, but this doesn't really give me the fabric feeling though. I don't really want to do this now, do I? We could though, why not though, right? It's not as even. It could be interesting, but hang on, then. No, this doesn't make sense. These are too splattery. No, they feel too rigid. Right, I see what the issue is here. Because, like, the material here inherently has some direction, perhaps? So having, like, a texture thing that is feels kind of rigid, that doesn't obey the direction of the form, feels a little bit stiff. I think that might be the issue here. Because it's like doing this. It's like a flat pattern on a round surface, on a curved surface. It wouldn't make sense. Oops. Let me just write this then. Generic case is texture. Yeah, I'm just gonna try every single brush I have here. See how I like about it. Oh, what is this? Why doesn't this work? It's just too... Forms might be too long. Too splattery. This is just a marker. Makes no sense. This is literally cracked brown and lightning. We got clouds. Clouds are kind of interesting sometimes because they kind of stand in for some other stuff. A little bit. It looks very dirty though if I do it like this, the texture. Kind of like the reference here too. The shapes are inherently very dirty. A lot of overlapping. So you get a lot of different tones there. And I don't like that. So what does that mean for us? Alright, so this is in principle, this is like the typical... So for us, the binary system, this would be 100%, right? Our C case here, up here, this flip over here. I think in general, these guys, these brushes are kind of just unusable for us because we don't really like. I don't really like it. Anyways. Stars. Yeah, I would argue that there's probably a subset of brushes that I cannot use because we're not working with more than just two tones here. Because I only picked the one shadow color, and that's it. I'm not picking like the midtones here. It can be conceivable that if I pick the midtones, then we can slowly work the transition with some of these patterns that I don't like. Maybe it will work out. But I think it's fine to ignore them for now. Yeah, this is a huge spreader that doesn't make any sense. It's very hard. Oh, it's not sparse enough. Actually, the only issue with this is the density. Oh, because it's spraying, I see. Oh, where's the center? Anyways, I don't like this. But this series of brush in this subtool here has always been very hard to use. Primarily because of the way they splatter the textures. I was just trying to see how I can fix that. And it is fixable, so that's good. Eventually we can come back to these. Let me just ignore this. Big splashes don't really make sense, it seems like. Some amount of noise might be fine, but that's not the main thing. We can always add that in easily later. No issues there. I don't know. It's not necessarily true, right? But then it depends on the... think that's how we got here. These brushes here. There is color mixing. And then we rely mostly on... I'm not sure about that. I think it's good that you don't throw those away. You get me? Nice to have, honestly. Hello, Maxi. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's a good texture for this. Apparently. Maybe inherently I'm not gonna find anything, because I think anything too fine doesn't necessarily represent like the fuzzy nature of it. Anything that's kind of big, I mean, it's unlikely we'll find something perfect, I guess. And then there's also a lot of these that are really hard. Very crisp. They still work though, I suppose. Just don't have mid-tones, because I'm not using that. Maybe this is impossible to do without using like intermediary values here. I'm trying to avoid using it only because apparently so far everything else has been done sort of in like a binary fashion. There's no reason to absolutely avoid it. I think there's a mismatch between like, or rather I'm just not very clear as to what I want. Because everything else is more of just that binary system. So logically, this stuffed animal here shouldn't be rendered to that sort of more realistic standard either. It should also operate on the same system. Otherwise, it would look very out of place. And then if we were to do first and whatnot, we might have to do it some other way. Whoa. I didn't realize it's just all squares here. Bad scores, you get me? Like, I mean, unless you hated those memories, I would say keep the books. Either way, right? How they shine. Hmm. Yeah, maybe just like a little bit of a fuzzy edge. And that would be that. Rely on gradient to do the thing. I guess my system inherently is calling for that, is it not? Right. Because the style relies on only 2 sets of colors. Gradient to do some of the sort of subsurface scattering bounce light work. Because I'm not using any blur tools for some of the edges, then I'm relying mostly just on the dithering effect of certain texture brushes to do the soft edges. And I see, Maxi, thank you. It'll look a lot less soft, but that's kind of how we're dealing with all the softer forms like Flash anyways. So maybe this should have been just... as an eraser. All the other textures are a bit too... Oh, I guess then the structure would be... Let me see. Let's see the setup that we're going for, right? It's the same for everything else. What? Oh, is it visible? Yeah, it is. Alright, because this is not going to... You alright there, you got me? Mm-hmm. Maybe carrying stuff. Right, it's the level of detail that goes on there. Did we do that? No, we didn't. So this is kind of violating that setup. You're kind of binary though, right? Oh, well, no. Binary simplification is different. Let's see. Binary is in two colors, versus binary is in has and 100% opacity and 0% opacity. Right, so this violates the second one, because I would have used this instead. I see. So fundamentally, it's being painted in a different way. Hello, Maxi. Well, I'm sure you can kind of relate to this to some extent, right? How should I say this? Like, it looks lovely for you, but to me, it's just some random sketch. Right? To me, it's nothing special. It might feel like this is like a great illustration. Wow, he must spend a lot of thought and thinking into setting it up and that kind of stuff. But to me, it's just like any other sketch. And so that's number one, right? But then number two, if you're really stuck at finding an idea, like if I were you, like what I would do is I would just go on Pinterest and just find, and I can spend a bunch of time browsing stuff. Or I can also just take like photos and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do a study of this thing. And then sometimes when you're studying, let's say you draw like the pose, or you draw like a face that you think might fit the pose, all of a sudden you start to have new ideas. So two ways about it, but either way, you just need to get fresh inputs. So either inputs based on other people's art, other people's music, other people's ideas, or photos, you know, that kind of stuff. Or just do some sketches and get new like sort of inputs from your own sort of on your own work, perhaps. I don't know how to phrase it, but you just need new things right now. Because whatever you have, your brain isn't giving you anything interesting. It's what's happening, right? So you just need new things for your brain to find something interesting in. You could do the, like, let's say, like what Igami said, if you limit yourself to a specific theme, they say creativity, not, blah, blah, blah. What's that, like, restrictions and limitations kind of foster creativity. But that process of, like, being creative, I feel is a lot more active in the sense that, like, you have to put in work, right? For example, if you're working with a specific medium, let's say you're going to paint with spaghettis only, like let's say macaronis only. That is a very limited form of medium. I'm talking about like arts and crafts, right? But because of that, you have to do some active problem solving, and then that gives certain sort of creativity. But that creativity is more of a creativity in terms of solving a problem, I guess, not necessarily on the theming. So I guess that's not quite relevant. It's not the best example that I gave, but I think it's slightly adjacent to what we're talking about. Or rather orthogonal. Actually, not even adjacent, it's kind of orthogonal. Anyways, I hate doing work. So, anyways, my method would just to be just wait to get inspired, but then make it so that it's very likely to get inspired. And if nothing happens after a good amount of time, just do sketches, and then see what happens. Right? And the worst case scenario, you still don't get any ideas after doing a bunch of sketches. At least you've actually practiced a little bit, rather than feeling so stuck. And tomorrow you might be a little bit more creative, maybe. Maybe it's the same problems, but at the end of the day, you're still kind of moving forwards, and I think that's pretty good. You wouldn't feel so hard on, you wouldn't be so hard on yourself if you know, remember that at least you did something, you know. Could be, all of these could be viable options. Yeah, no problem. It is tricky. I faced that problem quite a bit in the past because I only wanted to draw things that I truly feel, right? But then there's a secondary problem where even if I did feel something, I couldn't really draw it well because I don't have the practice for it anyways. That's why eventually it just came down to just, oh yeah, you know what, I kind of just have to do something, even if it's not something I really want to do. Kind of like all these pieces here too. I'm not emotionally invested. Sometimes they turn out well, sometimes they don't. But at least something gets done and I practice. How noisy does this get though? It would be nice to see like an actual reference instead of guessing. But then stuffed animals can be maybe like a body pillow. Wait, hang on. Hugging body pillow reference. Because body pillows, like at least not the anime ones, are like just white in color, right? So it would help with seeing the folds and stuff. Ideally, yeah, like this one here is perfect. I guess I have to turn on my my pure rep now. Oh no, it's already on. Never mind. Oh, I'm just stupid. This one right here, pretty good stuff. Basically exactly what we need. So I see the issue now, I think. With all the textures and stuff before, it's still mostly, it's kind of going in a different direction with the rendering. We're not really working with a binary sort of setup anymore. There's two concepts of binary here, I feel like. There's the fact that we only have... Well, I mean, is that the same thing though? I was gonna say there's like two main groups of colors. The one for the light and the one for the shadow. Actually, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. And then the other idea, the other binary so-called that I was gonna say was that your pixel either is in the light or in the dark. There's never sort of a in between. There's no opacity here. And all the stuff I tried before, they kind of added all these midtones and stuff. Whether if they're adding midtones because they're adding that pixel with that color, or they're using the shadow color but with some kind of opacity. Either way, they break that sort of binary setup, and as a result, the object that we're rendering doesn't really look that cohesive against everything else, simply because there's way more colors and stuff in between. I don't know where to put it. I'll write this down real quick. Is that true though? Did I use blur here? I think I did use a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's just a different way of doing it. So this would be a very specific style then, I guess, at the end of the day, where there is only this binary setup. Yeah, good stuff, you're good. What am I doing here? Cool. Control only. How do I deal with it? Over here. We're trying to reattach the process here. It's fine. Somewhat reattached, I would say. Oh, ended, huh? thing. I mean, is that your childhood home? I guess the place you grew up. So always look for a different texture, but I think given this current setup, we end up just using the same one. It is what it is. At least we learn a bunch of stuff along the way. Oh, it's not. Let's see. I guess maybe I'm just old, but like I feel like a lot of stuff you mentioned, I feel like it's more childhood things. But maybe it's just because you guys are younger. It feels like, you know, old textbooks and stuff especially gave me like this vibe that it's like a childhood home, cleaning it out for whatever reason. That's why you're finding all of it. Yeah, it could just be that I'm too old. Too old, broski. Yeah, at least if we can accept all these bigger textures, it still feels like it's soft. It just doesn't necessarily convey the material that much. Like the folds in here kind of sort of helps a little bit with the softness and like the material, I guess. But we don't really have like bundles of fur, like locks of fur, that kind of stuff. The dry film that is fuzzy, because this texture being consistent across everything else is just like, yeah, I guess the artist just like this thing. Not necessarily there to showcase texture per se. How would I do it with this brush though? I guess we would have to kind of paint in a little bit of like fuzz here and there. Yeah, if it goes over like the skin, that would be like the easiest way to show it. And then within the confines of this, what we have and can do over here, it would just be more like, I guess. I like this. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to do with this brush. What, the nonsense that I've written here? I think the good thing about like the how should I say this? Of course, like if you guys are here, you guys can see my entire process, right? Because I basically don't work on art except on stream. But a lot of this is not necessarily that relevant for you guys, and also it could be very wrong. Like maybe not the best way to frame it to organize the information. So I think another thing that is good for you guys is that you guys can just ask whatever question you might have, right? Because you can just ask whatever it is that you want to know, and then I can just tell you the most concise version of the information. And then I'll probably rant on for some other thing for like the next 30 minutes, but you guys don't have to read this junk. I don't read the junk after I've written it down. Anything that sticks. Anything that doesn't stick, I guess they're just archived forever. Oh, shitty quality photos. I can't really see any textures. Yeah, within this binary setup, this is kind of like gonna be like this, I guess, then, right? So if I do this, do that. これはいらないね。じゃあ。Why is it some pen for peak illustration and peak rendering? I don't know. That tends to be what happens, isn't it? Like if you kind of let loose and just draw whatever you want, not have the time pressure or like some misguided desire for certain things to be technically correct. I guess everything comes out to be a little bit more free, a bit looser, a bit more flowy. And as a result, tend to result in something better just because your mind feels a little bit more relaxed. And as for all the rendering and stuff, this is because we're actively pushing for it. So it's like a balance again. I am trying to push for more structure in a lot of the rendering and stuff. By the way, that's what the nonsense that you're seeing here is. I'm trying to classify different types of texture to figure out what is it that I truly like, right? But yeah, and then also some other nonsense that I learned today about the way that I'm approaching the rendering for the shark here. I think the plush in my mind was like, yeah, it'd be nice if there's more midtones, more tones and stuff to show it has more 3D form. But because inherently everything else, it inherently goes against what everything else has, which is just this binary setup where every pixel is either in the light or dark. It's never in a mid-tone in between, and it's never like a opacity setting. Opacity is 100%. So yeah, like having the midtones kind of messed it up. So I went back against that, and then this is where we are. Already looks better. I'm not sure personally how I feel about it. I think the different setup is kind of, yeah. I don't know. Personally, I don't necessarily feel it. They feel the same to me. Maybe the shapes on the stuffed animal is more agreeable or something. That'll be the main difference, I think. I guess I'm gonna take over for this. I just want to erase a little bit. Oh, I just realized that even if like one stroke has a big gap, I can do multiple strokes to break it down. And I will still have a decently large texture size there. Hello? Is this the breakthrough of the day? Am I being an idiot? Well, I probably am anyways, but it gets really insane though. Like it's basically just dithering at this point. I guess it always has been. Was it? Where's the line green from? Yeah, I was hoping to find a different set of brushes for the stuffed animal, but I guess he came back to the same. We are, I feel like no matter how much we learn about art, there's always something that is unclear, right? Because there was a bit of a talk between like approaching the art, the illustration, whether from a cell shading perspective or whether from a painterly perspective. And on one hand, you have a more clinical controlled approach where every time you add something in, you have to actively choose to add it in and know that it's going to look good in the final because you know it's going to count. Whereas in the painterly stuff, you can just spam a bunch of shit and then try to fix it up later. And because we were doing the cell shading method this time, actually I forgot what I was going to say. Oh my god, I lost my train of thought. Right, I think it's the complexity of the thing. Yeah, you know what? I have to do that the other approach. Like sometimes I try to break things, try to organize things in like this holistic singular model, but it's very overwhelming. It's very hard unless you have a lot of experience. At some point, I get overwhelmed, like right now, and then I'm gonna just do the other thing, which is don't care about the overall thing, only care about what we have today, right? What we have in front of us, which is we're doing a cell shading approach. We're doing this binary setup of the colors and layers, where every pixel is either light or dark. There are no blur tools being used. There are no sort of midtones being used. And in the confines of this style, I guess, there are certain techniques and ideas and certain brushes that I would like to use that makes it easier to work with. And I guess that's the takeaway for this setup here. You know what? I'm just going to open up that stylization PRF here because this is our sort of control, right? This is the thing that sort of is responsible for documenting everything that we're doing in terms of both color. And I'm gonna make one more for basically rendering. So primarily, in this case, primarily we're talking about textures. Secondarily, not too special. I would say secondarily would be color. So this is the current setup, and given what we have today, it's not done yet, but shit, how do I do this? Right, I need a text box. Even the hours later, right? So we're talking primarily. Let's make it so that it's easy to review this, right? So I need some categories here for information. Let me see. So we have color complexity, I would say. Maybe let's start with style first, right? So style would either be cell shading, or painterly. Because this idea of a style, I mean, like there's so many words that are constantly being used in various different contexts. I think this is one of them that might get a bit confusing. In this case, is maybe let's just call it approach instead, because style can get a little bit confusing. Because style encompasses a lot more than just the way you're putting in colors per se. It is still style though, but anyways, let's just say we use this. Cell shadings, so the philosophy is a binary approach where each pixel is either in light or shadow. No in betweens, be it due to midtones, so third color, or opacity, i.e. It less opaque shadow. Within the confines of this, we are primarily experimenting with textures, and this texture is the non-material related texture. I think, like, to some extent, textures should be always related to materials. I think it's kind of hard to necessarily detach it, but then you also have general stuff like noise, right? That kind of applies to everything at the same time anyways. So I still think you can like think of them as two separate ideas. And today's one is mostly just treating it as though it's noise. It's not so much like the material is X and Y or Z, that's why we're doing this. It's just consistent everywhere. I found all three merch that my mentor get Hasan Miku and Mama. Okay, very cool, Igami, very cool. That cancels the very idea of base colors. A good way to. I'm not sure which part you're referring to, but actually, you know what? I should include the layering structure here. So base, oops, color. Let's say layers. So base color, i.e. light, plus gradient. This kind of sucks. Layer information should be presented in the vertical fashion because that is just what's most natural to view it. I think it's kind of pain. Yes, I'm gonna make a new one for this. Rather, actually, this is more of a. You know what? Since we're doing this, I'm gonna go all out here. We're just going to do like a proper structuring. So let's say approach, right? Approach is okay. Let me put this with the bigger one. Approach. So we have number 1, cell shading. Number 2, painterly. And then depending on which of these approach it is, we have different ways of approaching the layering structure, right? So we have, let's say, I will call them different options because potentially we might have different ways of doing the same thing. Currently, I'm not 100% sure. But let's just open up the option here because categorizing the thing is a little bit easier this way. So with these two, we have our number 1 here for this, which is why we do this sort of binary approach, where you have our let's see, base color, then we add shadows, highlight, but in reality, things are binary, as I said. Oh, I see. I don't know how this fit into, let's say, like the other cell shader approaches, like workflows. But this current one that we're working on today is pretty simple in that they're only essentially... I don't know what should be counted or what should not be counted, but essentially they're just 4 layers. Ignore the PO, the paint over, right? Oh, there's also line, I guess that's 5 layer. Ah, okay. Let's do line, so hard light. I'm not gonna split it down between like different parts. I think that's up to sort of the binary approach. We have our... How do I demonstrate clipping though? How do I show that it's clipped to the one below? This is really confusing. This might get really confusing. I'll explain this, I think, once the whole structure is scouted, because that's confusing when thinking about base color. It's kind of like, okay, no outlines in painting. Huh. Oh, that's a great idea, Igami. Why don't I just freaking use curly braces? Wow, okay, we're just writing programming now. Actually, hang on. That's kind of interesting. How would you format this actually? Does curly means we're indenting or no? Curly implies that something contains something though. It doesn't necessarily imply like a what is clipped to what, but clipping is like it's contained within, is it not? It's just that the presentation of it is a little bit backwards, because curly braces like inherently you read it as like this is the container, and then this is the objects inside, right? Whereas in our case, the clipping structure is always the objects being on top of the actual container, like that. So it might not necessarily be that good, but let's just say I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. It's kind of confusing. Like if we get like a nice emoji, like that arrow thing would be nice. Anyways, just read it like this, right? We have the base. Click to the base, you have an optional gradient layer. It's optional in the sense that the layer itself is optional. I would use the gradient no matter what, but because base layer doesn't change shape anyways, so you can just gradient the base directly. There's no issues there. Then there's a group that's clipped on this for the shadow and the shadow gradient. The shadow gradient is clipped to just the shadow. So the flexibility here is that each like shadow might need to change shape, right? We're changing all these shapes, but the gradient remains untouched. So that's why there's this separation here. So this is the current setup for this. And of course, there's a lot of ways to sort of... let me just explain why it's the way it is first. So gradients, let's say shadow gradient. Shadow shape can be changed without issues, without needing to redo gradient. This is really unlikely. I don't think this is really necessary. This last line is basically saying that if, let's say, you have multiple gradients on the same part, having them on separate layers enables you to basically HSL adjustment for each one of them separately, right? That's more options, but maybe it's a thing, maybe it's not a thing, but I trust that whoever is going to use this, primarily myself, I imagine, that to have the presence of mind to do that anyways, if it's necessary. So that's fine. So there is this side, and then there is this side here. Oh my god. I wish I can just make this longer. Can I make this longer? Oh yeah, you can. Come on. And of course, Painterly stuff, we do have our Painterly workflow as well. So, oh shit. Painterly one isn't necessarily a layering structure. At least there is one, but I'm just not very clear about it. Let's leave that for now, because that's a bit slightly adjacent to what we're doing here. So based on this, we have our binary approach. I'm not gonna care. So it's already explained here, right? No, it's not. I'm just gonna copy and paste. Cool. I don't need to explain it here. So about the textures here. So So, actually, this should be explained here, I think. Not really sure. Like, textures are inherently related to the material, but the mentality here is just talking about noise, right? So I'm not considering the material. Even if subconsciously I might be choosing ones that are suitable for the material, but that's not what I'm thinking of actively. That's fine, I think. Wait, why did it become like this? Yeah, it's stupid. Textures. Okay. I want to group information together, but not yet. I think I'm not clear enough just yet. So the notes here, right? So the notes here are basically, let's say with so figure out some textures I would like to use going forwards. And I think yeah, I'm hoping this is not going to be confusing for myself even, because I'm saying the texture, my approach for texture is noise based, but I'm specifically separating noise between the other things I'm considering noise. Because actual noise is just this static over here, whereas like the other kind of noise could be just scratches that doesn't have any specific meaning per se. And for these sort of still noise-based textures, we still need them to be decently fine in terms of the details. Music might be a bit loud, I think. Okay. Overall balance needs to be maintained. Balance is still tilted towards less noise. So still more rest for the eyes, right? We're not trying to oversaturate everything. Enough to sort of add a little bit more grit, but not enough to take over the entire thing. I think the balance might be 70-30, or even lesser than... so maybe approximately... maybe less than 20%. And then the third point here is actually a general... Wait, let me think. So this here is a preference for noise-based sequence. The other one is actually less of a noise-based one and more of a specific material and form-based one. Oh, I wonder. So form-based and material-based, they are different. One is dependent on the geometry, one is dependent on the material. Right, so there's like 3 different aspects of this, I guess. Material based. Fabric, canvas, etc. Right? And then there is also what was it? Form based. Okay, this last one is a bit dubious because a form is technically done by the values. How does texture play a part in this? I think it's less of a separate category by itself, but rather it should be combined with material in the sense that this doesn't just show material, but it also needs to conform to objects' geometry. Think no flat. Shit, too long. No flat toweling on curved surfaces. So it'll be combined together. Secondary objective is colors don't care. So textures can be this. Can I push this tab one more in? Oh, you can. Look at that. Textures and materials. So rendering primarily textures and no, that's not true. We also have textures, materials. We have shapes, right? Shapes as shape languages. That's also another target. Stuff that we like to have. I think balance between light and dark, those things are more compositional based, perhaps. Not necessarily a rendering process thing. It will be part of, if anything, it will be part of colors, because colors have to come first. Even though technically the comp might be neither one specifically. We did include it in here anyways, right? Comp storytelling. So this comp can be oh. Yeah, shapes and stuff. Yeah, this is, yeah, it's really hard to break it down in half. Like this. I'm just gonna leave that for there. So this is a general noise preference for noise-based sequence. I think what else is there? Does not look good. Contrast. Hard edge. Okay, let's see. Oh, no, but that's a general rule, I think. The usage of textures is show material, show noise, but show form. It's not, yeah, it's so not clear. Holy shit. But the way we're using it here is kind of also like a way of softening up the edges, which implies that it's not just noise based. Specifically, it might be more form based. So form based is like a separate thing, I guess. So they're not mutually exclusive though. Oh, what? Ah, goddamn, it's broken because of the way I structured it. I need to review this, I think. Dithering. Yeah, the conformance of the material base to the form is a must, but fundamentally might be slightly different if that's like tiling. This one is specifically talking about the transition between light and dark, whereas this one is not necessarily so. Anyways, it's not that clear. I can kind of see a separation, but it's not very clear. But it's fine. Let's say discovery. Specifically, get a thing, Skyrim. I think that was the issue I ran into with the texture just now. I think it was primarily because there were too many midtones and stuff. Because we were trying textures that were blending shit together and I was breaking stuff up. So that's what led to the sort of binary approach idea. And then that kept things very clean. Right, going forwards, I can be very clear about the approach and what kind of texture may or may not work with the approach. Because if you're doing binary like this, then the texture is primarily going to just be along the edges here. Be it whether if it's there to show material or just to soften up the edges. Could be either, could be both. But now I know what would probably work and what would probably wouldn't work, I think. Not 100% sure. And then the other thing we talked about briefly was about the two approaches, whether if it's cell shading versus painterly. Because we kind of did both. So shell shading is more clean and clinical, whereas painterly is finding order in chaos, essentially. At some point, so despite the complexity of both approaches can kinda be placed on the same axis. Placed on opposite ends of the same axis. Eventually, we should find a comfortable spot in the middle somewhere. And then that would be our style, essentially, I think. That would be the idea. Kind of save a little bit less, a little bit more. Some of the more, like, the detailed stuff that I've written here, I'm just gonna leave it till we finish. I'm just gonna export the whole thing and dump it in. Yeah, I don't know if this is gonna make sense tomorrow. At least I have everything sort of grouped in one area here. And then over time, as we try different things, hopefully we'll come back and fix it up or not, whatnot. This is probably good enough for now. I think I lost a lot of the train of thought in the middle of doing that, by the way. I myself am getting a little bit confused. You can tell when I start slowing down, when I start... I can't speak as fast or as clearly. But either way... Wait, what is this? Why do I have an empty layer here? When do I do this? Ooh. I mean, it's an approach thing. It's not necessarily a mandatory, but it is a very fundamental part of it, is it not? I'll just add one more line here. Specifically the gradient. It's rather arbitrary, right? The idea of the gradient just It's dubious, the virus. I don't know. I think a lot of stuff is not really written down that clearly. Like all of these things make sense to me now, but to be honest, if I go back to read some of the stuff before, like let's say this in particular, right? 2 characters equals tighter perspective anatomy. At one glance, I didn't know what I was talking about. But then as I started speaking, I started getting a little bit of memory flashback. Then I realized that, oh yeah, that's what I meant. What by tighter, right? Because tighter itself is, I think it needs a bit of context. It makes sense as artists to think that tighter means, okay, be more accurate. But if I truly lost my memories and don't have that context, I don't think I'll be able to necessarily like get that much information out of it. But yeah, like this is meant to be as clear as possible. It is what it is. So with respect to this one, we just need to deal with the darker areas, and then we are kind of done with it as well. So I'll just work on that. The hair could use with a little bit more attention for sure. I like how simple and effective this is though, because you just have 2 shapes and some gradients. And with some final overall adjustment layers, sort of like a overlay on top. Let me just knock this out real quick. Yeah, this overlay. Just a little bit. You can really bring things together very quickly. And then if you want colors, you can always just hijack the lines here to add more colors. Currently our lines actually have a bit of a problem because it is very translucent. The opacity is a big deal in the lines, and it's making it not have as much presence as I would like it to. We can just duplicate the layer and compress down like what we did over here though. Did I do it here? I don't think I did it here, did I? Yeah. Did I? Wait. I haven't colored the shark yet. Okay. I just take over this base layer then. Let's just do this. There you go. Maybe a bit of gradient on it. Yeah, you got me have a good lunch. Brunch. Wait, late brunch? Surely that would just be lunch by now. Here. Wait, but I duplicated this, right? Oh. Alright, what was I doing? Alright, the dark stuff. You guys here. Is my ref still open? I don't need the ref anymore. Get out of here. It's nice to be able to show the layering stuff on stream because usually this is hidden by the thing, right? Which I don't really like, but it's not much choice because there's nowhere else to put the reference. But today we can, if we can help it, then I'm not gonna use it. It's noise. Do not need it. No complexity there. I'm just gonna take over. Yeah, I think I'm just kind of like very rigid in my thinking, I feel like, because of like math and science always requiring structure. Everything needs to be structured. I'm looking at this layer here, right? This is the white part on the dark areas, right? So we have a layer for all the dark areas. And then in the dark areas is a light part. So that's how the layer is split. I think that's pretty logical. But then given the usual setup where every single block of color, every single shape and color in themselves have their own separate layers for a darker, for like what's in the light and what's in the shadow, right? The base of it will be in the light. So this should have been the stuff in the light. And then we'll get another layer on top for it to be in the shadow. But since this entire shape is in the shadow, I could just use this as a single layer. But then in the past, I would get really caught up on the structure and I would just make another layer for no real good reason, I think, other than just to satisfy, to keep it the same structure. Which I think is kind of stupid. But that's what I would do. I kind of want to make this a bit darker here. Did I leave my overlay on? Yeah, I should not do that. I want a bit more presence there because of the contrast on these guys here. It'd be nice to be a little bit darker. Right. Ooh. Yeah, I'm not rendering any bounce light here, so it is what it is. Oh, wait. Hang on a second. Sorry, not you. Sorry, what is this? This is an older version of the document. Why do I have two? I thought I replaced it. But, complex lighting. Alright, there you go. So the white remains in the sequence here. This can go in. This will be DD. Check. And then secondary the gradient. Oh. Alright, let's bring this home. Let's finish this. Now let's get rid of this. Oh, I need to fix my brush. Square brush not doing curves well. What a surprise. What a shock. are still going, everything is still stable. Okay, that's fine. What do I do with this? I can have it come out to the front, right? Is that natural? Maybe. Doesn't have to matter too much, I guess. So what happens if it is coming out to the front then? What did my shadows do? Don't see anything. Need something darker. I'm really my worst enemy, man. Holy shit. I've been thinking about this binary system thing. Because we have the style alignment sequences here that we thought out before. This is basically 2A, right? This is the 2A sequence. What did I write down for this? Low level of polish, speed, focus. So this one isn't very clear. Wait, hang on. The simple, colorful constant with lines, faster focus. Simple logic shape. Yeah, we didn't really tie down line stuff. It's an approach to cell shading. It's an approach to this thing. Maybe it's just an approach to... Oh man, this song is old. 16 years ago, The Great Escape. Okay. Anyways, no complex lightness. Right, this is a more general style description because it's trying to tie down not just rendering but colors but lines and stuff like that. It's going across many different things. This one specifically is just a setup for cell shading, I think. I don't know yet. It feels like there is a... some connection here. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, the lighting's not necessarily very consistent, if I'm being honest. More vibe-based. I'm trying to not do the same thing here, but I like this more than like something that's only like half like this, I feel like. Also, I don't really get what's happening with this butt looking as still. If this was the case, this would taper off a lot earlier, right? Sure. We're talking about top down, right? Yeah, yes, yeah. Let's not make it more complicated than it needs to be then. Broski. Why is it drawn like this? Who did this? Not so convinced about the shape. I don't really want to redraw. Buina. You know, I don't mind it being the same shape. I think it's fine. It's so hard to see when it's so dark. There should be shadow on the ass, but I'm not gonna bother. Should be shadow here, I imagine. Hello, Sarah Chandra. Shara? Shara. Wait, no. Shara. Yeah, I think it's fine, right? Eventually yeah, I'll just leave it for my future self. I'm gonna figure it out eventually. Something's wrong with the shape. I don't know. I want to spend too much time figuring it out. He's good. Oh, of course. Hmm? something else I can use here. I forgot about this brush today. Come on. Oh, tablet disconnected. Congrats. Congratulations. Let's put this now. Synced up. What am I? Oh, it's a good thing. Where's the shadow? Oh, it's here. There are boots. Let me see. Hair. Where's hair? Is that even? Wait. Oh, I didn't have any radiance on the hair yet. Looks kind of nice though, even without it. Kind of nice to have it a little bit more contrasty. Maybe I just keep it like that. That's a different section. Oh, I'll just keep it. Not enough control, I think, in this. Why can't I use it then? I don't know if I just gotten used to it, but I feel like it's not necessary anymore. In the beginning, I do remember thinking this is a bit basic. It'd be nice to have a little bit more. Now adding anything or changing anything feels weird. GG, I guess. GG, no read. I don't think that's necessary. Put it up here. Oh. That must be the overlay. Let's see. Makes sense. Shapes are decently agreeable. I think hair can use some work on this side for sure. Maybe next time. Alright, now what? Yum yum. Must be something. I don't think anything we do will make sense. I think it's just gonna break a bunch of stuff. We don't have enough time to get started on something new anyway, so... Interesting. Yeah, less of stuff like this and maybe just generic stuff that applies evenly across everything. But the colors look fine though. Anything that's gonna change the colors or the balance. Both of those are fine right now. Colors and values are fine. The hue is also what we want. Saturation. Let me check. It's a bit more saturated than usual, but I think within the confines of I guess this kind of art. Makes sense. Sure. The bluer and the oranger ones. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. I don't think so. Now what? I guess we export a copy into my thingy. Sure, whatever it is, I don't need it. Let me see. What? Oh, these guys. The notes. Where is my... Oh, I closed it. Where is it? What? Did I not use reference? No, I did use reference. I just don't have it open. 270. Guess I'll just keep some stuff that is relevant. I'll shift click here. So you have to write this. I might just spend the rest of the time finishing this up so I don't forget. Okay. Save this. Check, check. Okay. Okay. Shit. How's this set up? So we have our rough sketch. Oh wait, didn't I write it down here? Oh, it has the whole process here. Lemon. This is not even. Wait, hang on. Oh, this is not even layer setup. Wait, hang on. I have to press right here. Sorry, this is here. Okay. I think that's actually it. Cause the layering for this is not, well, there's a lot of layers. Possibly more, but I mean it depends on complexity. But I think ideas-wise, it really is just a base color for each item, object, character. It could be anything. Like how fine-grained it is up to the person to decide at that point in time. The main thing is as an additive process where we constantly just keep putting stuff on top instead of maybe going back and erasing certain things. You just paint over, right? Just keep painting over and over. The rough sketch still exists above all of this color rough, so this stuff below is the color rough. And then at some point we do the final paint over, where but each separated element has their own final PO layer. And this is so that adjustments between layers can still be done. Between all these different elements, foreground, middle ground, background, can still be done, despite the paint over process. Then finally you have the overall adjustment that goes on top of everything. So, like for this one here. It does look kind of empty, huh? It looks really empty now. There's just a little bit too much white, I feel like. Just a little bit too much. This part looks kind of dark now, huh? Yeah. The process is over here. Rough lines. Let's go about layer. Color upper chest, mainly underneath additive process, going to rendering speed lines by character. Yeah, so basically, layer setup wise, we just sort of consolidate everything into this, whatever that we had before. Merge, right? And then do a final paint over. So the process is actually more important than the layering setup for the Painterly, which makes sense. Because Painterly, at the end of the day, like if you think about it, it's like traditional. Right? Traditional, you only have one layer anyways. So the process is more important than the setup. But the cell shading, at least the one that we're doing, is more... Layering is more important because it offers flexibility through that layering process, I guess. Yeah. So that is that. There's this. Today is February 11th. At least it was. Now it's February 12th, but it's 12 a.m. So Thursday, Friday. It could be nice if we do like a quick Valentine sketch for Faye for the next 2 days. Get it done, render it as well. Could be interesting. I have half the mind to have her use her feathers. I think that's probably interesting. More interesting than like a leather or chocolate. So Valentine anime. I'm not logged in here. Can nuke this now. Save. Close. I wonder how many of this is AI. There's some styles that I do recognize. And then it's like generic looking ones, I think. Oh. Actually, this is an interesting thing because if we do something like this, perhaps, then we can start to play around with textures. They are truly noise-based, right? These are truly noise-based textures because they're not about the material per se. It's not like like the what was this called again? Halftone thing. It's necessarily representing any material. So we could actually, this would be a good direction for the stylization stuff. The stylization path, right? We have 2 skill trees here, basically. If only the skill tree was clear enough about like what kind of skills you'll be acquiring, you know? They're kind of crafting the tree and experiment and traversing it at the same time. We have the color practice, which is just like miscellaneous colors, and then we have our rendering more focused stuff. And of course, neither one of these can truly detach from one another. Like this would still have textures and stuff, but the focus is different. And a good continuation would be something like this, actually, given that it is Valentine and that it is more graphic designy here. We can do something like this. I'm gonna grab this so I don't forget. We do something that's only like bust up, so we don't have like the full body to deal with. I think. I see a feature creep, but it's gonna be a problem. Anyway, but we're kind of done for today. I'm just gonna browse some stuff, I guess. Yeah, hit empty right now. Holy shit. This is nice to see, right? Like, this is kind of what we're doing. It's just like 2 shapes, right? 2 shapes. Light and shadow, light and shadow. It's so reassuring to see other people doing it. I mean, we probably got the idea from someone else anyways. But it's always nice to see it again. All the Arknight stuff is just so complex. Oh yeah, there was let me see. Let me find it. Yeah, there's this piece here. Huh? Where'd it go? This is so absolutely insane. I was looking at this today. Oh man, like I really hate rendering. Such a pain in the ass process. But I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, I definitely do want to be able to do something like this one day, right? So I guess as much as we don't like it, I'm just gonna have to keep pushing for it. Yeah, let me send this thing. This is like a new Arknight's event key visual thingy. I'm not really sure. I saw someone else actually commenting on this. I forgot what they said about it though. But yeah, like this so much to unpack, right? You have good colors, you have good comp, all these sort of interesting glitch looking effects. Everything blends together. It's like different versions of the sky. The textures, the balance of the textures, right? There's enough empty areas, slightly noisier areas. The lighting, the value, everything looks so good in this. This feels so masterful. Let me take a quick look at the value mapping here. How do we do this? $10 to $90, huh? $10 to $90. We have some very bright areas, but very few. What does the levels look like? No, not levels. Oh, right now it doesn't work. So I need this. Pretty even, I guess. Oh, actually, it's easier to view in here because I can zoom. Yeah, I guess it's some kind of layer clipping mask then, right? They're just painting it in different... Yeah, like, how the hell did they did... what? I'm trying to... Yeah, I understand the implications now, right? Because, like, this is painterly, right? We're not doing cell shading or anything. I don't know how consistent it is necessarily, though. Some of these parts are kind of hard to see through. This is where the binary system shines, by the way. Like, cause like these areas where you have the same object but with different colors. If you work with just the binary setup, where it's either having a pixel or not having a pixel, then you can just use that as a selection and paint it in on the other side with the other colors. So if let's say the clouds has like a light and dark, then the light areas is on its own pixel and then the dark is on its own set of pixels. Then you can do something like that. Even if you do see more than two tones here, it could just be opacity thing, right? The presence of... So the pixels are still kind of separated between one or the other. But I mean, don't think they did that. I think they just painted it and just used skills to make sure it's consistent. I mean, this side is just overlay on top, I guess. And this one is different. And then whatever the hell is happening over here, I'm not sure. Maybe some copy and pasting or... That's a lot to dissect here. That's like a lot to dissect here. This truly is a massive study. There's so much to unpack here. The textures for the boats. Textures for the leaves, the mountains, the trees, the clouds. Actually, this texture is interesting. So this is not only showing material, but also showing form, right? So it's in a direction. But it's just because it's the nature of it. But the textures themselves are inherently talking about form still. Actually, it's interesting the way I wrote it down over here. it's interesting there's a form-based texture because the texture at the end of the day is just the undulations on the surface. It is just the complex form being simplified into a pattern. So it is interesting there's a split here. Um, oops. Larger shape, larger form. I know what I'm talking about, but like just to make it so that the language is clear about the separation between material base and this form based idea. But oh, glow. Wait, hang on. But the background's white. The background's kind of white. It doesn't really fit in here. But I looking at this, the sail's glow kind of reminded me of that artist that we studied before, who used a lot of rake looking as brushes. Basically similar to this, where the glow is not an airbrush, but this sort of horizontal texture going across both shapes essentially on top. But our background's white. We don't have a lot of spot for it. Actually, I didn't really add glow for these areas. I'm pretty sure I had a checklist of stuff to try and add somewhere. I don't know where it went. Because I foresaw that I'm gonna forget about a lot of things over time. I guess I forgot about the list itself. Is it? Oh, we do have like other stuff too, right? Oh, but this is kind of tricky. I don't like it, by the way. I don't like what I'm doing here. I'm gonna give it a try. Yeah, unless it's consistent across the board. If not, it looks kind of weird. I don't feel like adding this right now. This is what it is. Anyways, I guess I'll hop off here. Tomorrow we'll brainstorm for some Valentine ideas, and then do a quick sketch, finish that off, and then when everything's finally done and dusted, we can I can go back to my complex thing that we were doing before. Try to make use of our new knowledge. But thank you guys for joining me today. Oh, actually, one last thing. Let's see how long we took for this these two sketches to be done. How long was it? I see 4 streams. About was it 8.5 plus 6, so about 15 hours, I would say. I don't know if we truly spend that much time on it. It doesn't feel like we did. 15 hours? Yeah, maybe we did spend so much time. I don't know. Could just be the crashes too, though. But anyways, thank you guys for coming. Have a good night, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Whoa, whoa, whoa! What's happening?